Hey guys, how's it going? It's boy M.K.S here, back in another video. Sticking to the theme of Black History Month, I thought about some inspiring, famous Black people. So hopefully this will inspire many people, and I suppose the goal of it is to have a bit of fun, but also to show people from the Black diaspora or the Black community, Black British people, what they can achieve from one minority to another. So I hope people out there enjoy it, and if I forget any names or if I didn't mention any that you want to add, please don't hesitate to add any comments you want to make, just generally in the comment section. Always welcome as ever to ask any questions or make any comments you want. And yeah, so here goes. So number one, I'm going to include on my list. He's probably not hugely famous, but I hope he appreciates me mentioning him in this video. Is a friend of mine, kind of, although we're only friends on Facebook. We haven't got the chance to meet yet, but he does a lot of work in terms of inspiring, in terms of inspiring Black British people, especially, and empowering his community. And that's Patrick Vernon, who made a book, who did some research and made a book on the 100 greatest Black Britons, I think it's called. So please Google him and check him out. I think he does some great work. He's also on the channel Blakademic on YouTube and on other forms of social media, and I think he does some great work. So yeah, hope he appreciates the shout out. And I actually, to try and research this, to try and remember names and things like that, I looked on the Wikipedia entry for 100 greatest Black Britons. So yeah, I have him to thank. Hopefully, if I make it through this list without my dyslexia messing me up and forgetting names and all that kind of thing. Anyway, moving on. Number two, I believe, if I'm correct, if I'm not mistaken, she's the first ever Black British MP or politician or whatever, and that's Diana Abbott. I'm not a huge fan of Diana Abbott, I admit, but she is an inspiration, I think, for Black people and for women, especially Black women, I'm sure. I'd love to hear from Black women themselves or Black people themselves, or even women themselves generally, whether Diana Abbott is an inspirational figure for you or not, or anyone on this list is inspirational for you, generally as a Black person, or I assume it's mainly to inspire Black people. But yeah, I'd say she's the first Black British politician, and she's also a woman, obviously, as I say, which who are not always represented in fields like politics. Number three, speaking of politicians, I think for the third one, I'm going to include David Lammy, the politician, the MP for Tottenham. I can't remember how long it said he's been the MP for Tottenham on Wikipedia, but yeah, he's been there for a long time, probably for like 30 or 40 years since I was a kid, maybe even since I was born. But yeah, David Lammy, who's done some great work to empower the Black community and call the government to account for the scandals that happened during the Windrush scandal. If you don't know about that, if you're watching from overseas or you just don't know, please Google that. Number four, I'm sure there are many police as well, like the first Black police or people like that. I would maybe for part two, I might try and find more like people like police or judges or people like that, or solicitors, lawyers, and that sort of thing. So I think it would be good for Black people to get legal representation and get equal access to justice. But yes, so number four, but for this one, I'm going to include, because I can't think of any Black police off the top of my head or whatnot, I'm going to include like sports stars. There's quite a few sports stars, obviously, like especially football. I don't want to stick too much to stereotypes because I want to cover different areas, so it shows Black people can succeed in politics, S.T.E.M, business, and all sorts of areas rather than just sports. But there are many footballers like Ian Wright, who's a bit of a character, but yeah, he's done a lot of good work. He's done things about helping kids to get fit, kids from all sorts of backgrounds as well. So not just for the Black community, but just generally, I think he's done a lot of good work for charity, I'm sure. But yeah, there's also obviously more. Currently, there's like Marcus Rashford, who's done like the campaign for trying to encourage the government to help kids who are struggling with like getting meals and things like that, help with their finances. No, not everyone will probably agree with that campaign, but I think it's arguably a good campaign. I know many people have admired him for it, not just from the Black community, but just generally, because he's talked about it for kids from disadvantaged communities, from all backgrounds. but yeah, Marcus Rashford and players like that, and Ian Wright, and there's been many great black players who have played for England, although I'm not an England fan. But like as a fan of Italian football, on that note, I think if there's more immigration, there's more opportunities for a pool of talent in areas like football. So I know it's a controversial view. I'm not saying. I mean, I do disagree with illegal immigration, but I do think Italy should encourage like more legal immigration from countries that were former colonies. But anyway, that's a subject for a different day. But yeah, there are also many boxers. I don't really follow boxing, but there are people like Nigel Benn back in the day, and people whose name I can't quite remember. Chris Eubank, that's his name I was trying to think of, and Lennox Lewis, who was absolutely massive. And players and boxers like that. Even in rugby, I think there's quite a few now, or has been over the years. But yeah, I know stereotypically there's more black players in like football and boxing. Again, if you can add any more, please add them in the comment section below. Number 5, Doreen Lawrence, the mum of Steve Lawrence, who was unfortunately murdered in a racist attack. He was a teenager who was murdered. Doreen Lawrence, obviously, it's very sad that she lost her son. I think that'd be sad for anyone to lose their child, especially fairly young. I know people have lost their kids even younger, of course, but that's obviously really sad. But she's been a campaigner for justice and equality for a long time. She's got many awards for such. I know you're always going to have polarizing opinions. I beg your pardon. But yeah, I think a lot of people will probably admire the work that she's done. Number 6, I'm not a huge fan of his comedy, but I'm going to include Lenny Henry. I forgot his name then, another embarrassing moment. Number 6, Lenny Henry, again, look like I suppose you could say he's been a successful comedian for quite a while. He's also done a lot of work for charity, come to think of it as well. So yeah, I think he's pretty cool in a way. Again, I must admit I'm not hugely keen on his comedy, but I mean, he has been in the game for a long time, so obviously people out there do enjoy his comedy, and he's done well, and he's done a lot for charity, including in developing countries as well as I'm sure local charities and things like that. He does a lot for like Red Nose Day when money's collected for charity and that sort of thing. Number 7, Levi Roots is one of the most successful people who have been on the Dragon's Den. The Dragon's Den, for those who might not know, somehow the Dragon's Den is like a business show where people pitch to potential investors for investment. I think he's, if not the most successful, at least one of the most successful investors. Successful business people who have acquired investment. Some might have overtaken him by now, but yeah, I think he was the most successful at the time when he acquired that investment. And Reggae Sauce is very successful. I think it'd be great to support minority businesses like Reggae Sauce. Levi Roots, his company, his real name is Keith Valentine. I can't remember his surname, but yeah. So yeah, he's quite a successful business person. I wanted to include a business person in this list as well. Number 8, Trevor McDonald. He's been on the news for a long time, ultra posh. And I think he's retired by now. I imagine. I don't really watch the news, but I've not seen him for a long time, so I imagine he's retired. But he was, I think he's initially from the Caribbean, but he obviously has a British passport, so you could most people would class him as British. But yeah, he was on the news for a long time as probably the first major black British presenter on TV. Number 9, there are also many, on that note, black British presenters at the moment, and I think probably not, some would argue not enough, or there could be more representation, but I think Trevor McDonald sort of led the way for that to happen. Number 9, Benjamin Zephaniah, a really pretty successful poet, and he admitted he can barely do his ABC, but he's a very good spoken poet, and I'm keen on quite a lot of his politics. Again, no one's perfect, as I often say, but he is pretty cool, and I agree with probably most of what he says, probably like 90% of what he says, maybe even more than 90%, 99% even. I probably disagree like 1 or maybe maximum 10% of what he says, but I think most of the things I agree with, except for I don't support the same football team as he does, but everyone's got their faults. I'm just kidding. But yeah, Benjamin Zephaniah, who left school at 15, but he's done really well, and he shows, again, this list is about partly at least about having fun, but also about inspiring people from the black community to like not be in the victim mindset and to believe you don't have to go to the root of crime or criminality or being unemployed or not believing in yourself. Hopefully these sort of lists will make you think you can achieve great things. At number 10, Viv Anderson was the first ever fully black player to play for England for the national team, and obviously paved the way for many others. He used to get loads of racial abuse, as well as the other first black players who played in the Premier League, or whatever it was called before the Premier League. And I think it's probably before the Premier League days, I imagine. But yeah, I tried to include in this list like people who are fully black, not mixed race like myself, or I'm half Indian, half white. But I wanted to include, like maybe on Mondays, I will include, if I can, like people who are part black, part white and part black, or part Asian and part black even. But for this list, I wanted to include people, specifically British people. I'd love to have a list like this for people from Africa. And then in February, as it's Black History Month in America, I would love to have like the same list for for African Americans, like Kanye West or people like that. But so I'm not sure why my stomach is rumbling. But anyway, yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. And again, I'd love to hear from you or read from your comments. And if you can think of adding any more famous black people, especially famous black British people, not so much like mixed race, like fully black perhaps, or if you want to, whatever you want to comment, or whoever you want to add to this list, maybe someone who inspires you, or something that you're proud about being black, especially black British people. But again, anyone's welcome to comment, and I'm out. Peace and love.